Hi, this is assignment 006, Force and Interaction. For this assignment, you will need a pen or pencil, notebook paper, or paper, or in general, just loose paper is fine. Your task, watch the Ed puzzle, answer the questions that are linked into the Ed puzzle, and then as you go, you're going to take notes. So when it comes to taking notes for an Ed puzzle, even if it's an Ed puzzle, I do want you to take notes. So what you'll do is as you're watching the Ed puzzle, go ahead and just stop the video, record the information in your notebook as we go. And then again, because you're watching the video on your own, you can control how fast or slow you're going, which is way different than when we were in class and I was controlling it. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to grab a piece of paper or your composition notebook, go to the next available page, and on assignments, you always want to include the Canvas number and the title. So this particular assignment is 006, Force and Interaction, and that little weird symbol is a symbol for force. So force and interaction. So basically everything on the following pages, you're doing the Ed puzzle, answering the questions, but you're also putting everything in your notes. So, and the reason why is that anything you put in your notebook can be used on a project, a quiz, or a test that we might have. All right, so let's go ahead and start with the warm-up. Yes, the warm-up goes in your notebook, so that's going to be the first thing you put into your notebook. And the title of your warm-up is, Does It Have to Touch? So my question to you, and again, I just want to know what you know, yes or no, and then just tell me why. I'm not looking for right answers at this point. I just want to know what pops into your head, what you're thinking. Does something have to be touched in order for a force to act? Yes or no, and tell me why. Go ahead and answer that right now. So the answer is no, objects do not have to touch in order to have a force between them. We're going to learn there are two types of forces. There's two types of forces. So forces can be something that's called contact, where they're actually touching, and that would be something like pushing a cart, lifting weights, anything that has like two or more objects that actually physically touch. The other force we're going to be looking at is called a non-contact force. And those are forces that actually do not have to touch. So for that example, I'm thinking about gravity and magnetism. And there are some actually other forces. And again, we're going to talk about some of these, not all of these. All right, so yep, the do now should be, warm-up should be written in your notebook. And then I do want you to go ahead and record all this information in your notebook. If you need to stop the video, go ahead and do that now, write this down, and then get back. Okay, so the first force we talked about was the contact force or the touching force. So forces can be contact or touching, like I said, like pushing a cart or lifting weights. They actually have to be touching. And again, stop the video at any point. Then the non-touching, again, would be forces. They're basically forces you can't see. They're also what you call invisible forces. So again, like gravity and magnetism. We're going to go into this a whole lot more later, so don't worry so much about that right now. So let's talk about this thing called force and interaction. All right, force and interaction. So when you push, right, remember a force is a push, pull, or lift. When you push on an object, you're exerting force. So for example, this little guy, he's exerting a force. He's pushing on the box this way. So he's pushing on the box. He's exerting a force. And what I mean by exert or exerting, it means you're applying or putting effort into something, right? So you've got to actually make some sort of action happen. Oops. All right, so from the lab you guys did the other day, I had you push some objects, you might have pulled them or you might have lifted them. In that activity, you were exerting a force on your, you were exerting forces on your object. Sorry, my mouse is super sensitive. So in my demonstration, I had two dumbbells. One was a 5-pound, one was a 15. And when I pushed on them, I exerted a force. So for example, I was exerting a force to get them to move. And I was exerting the force that way, exerting the force. So what I mean by that is really that force is an interaction, right? Force is an interaction. It's an interaction, and an interaction is it's a kind of action that makes something happen, right? But you have to have two or more objects involved for this interaction. So what it ends up being is it's this sort of cause and effect relationship. And I know in history and ELA, you've done a lot of cause and effect writing. In science, almost everything you do, every experiment is some sort of cause and effect. So let's take a little bit closer look what I'm talking about. So, for example, the weights are on the counter, so they're just sitting there, right? In physics, we say they're at rest, they're not moving, and we'll talk a little bit more about these physics concepts. So when I put them on the counter and I hadn't done anything yet, those dumbbells were at rest. But when I pushed on them and they began to move, that's when I exerted a force. There was an interaction. The cause was the push, the effect was the motion. We'll take a little look. So you can see I'm pushing, pull them back, push. So when I was pushing and pulling, that was the exertion. All right. Oh, there we go. So let's do a quick check for understanding. So we've reviewed some of the initial ideas and things you should have picked up in the lab. So go ahead and answer these few questions for me. We'll do a quick review and then we'll move on. All right, let's talk a little bit more about cause and effect. As what we were talking about, is there a relationship between mass and force? So again, at this point, you should still be taking notes. Again, stop the video and record the following information in your notebook. There we go. All right, so I'm having major issues. There we go, maybe that way. All right, so you should have discovered in your investigation that larger objects require more force or a stronger push to move them, meaning the bigger, the greater the mass, the greater the heaviness is, the more force is going to be needed to make it move. So you saw in that video when I pushed the 5-pound and the 15-pound dumbbell, at one point you saw that 5-pound dumbbell actually moved a little farther because I was able to push it easier. All right, so go ahead and make sure you got that in your notes. All right, now let's talk about this thing about energy. So when you use force to move an object, you're transferring energy to that object. The energy that's transferred is called kinetic energy. We're going to start using this symbol KE. It's an abbreviation, but it's the same thing. So KE is basically energy in motion. We're going to learn a little bit more that even if something's not moving, it might have energy in it. You may already know what that is. All right, so this was just a preview, kind of an introduction to what we're doing. Let's go ahead and I want you to do an exit ticket. You can put this in your notebook or not. Actually, you don't have to. This is basically an exit ticket for me. But I want you to look at this scenario. So you've got Angel here. She's got on some skates. Sorry about that. She's pushing against a wall. And it says, Angel puts on her skates and stands next to a wall. She pushes against the wall and starts rolling. All right, so she's exerting a force on that wall to get herself to roll. But here's what I want you to think about. After a short distance, Angel stops. Nice typo. That should be Angel stops rolling. Why do you think she stopped rolling? Go ahead and write that, post that in the Ed puzzle. Why do you think she stopped rolling? I'm not going to give you the answer just yet. All right. Whoa. All right, guys. That is it for now. Wow, major issues. Sorry about that. Hold on, guys. All right. Major issues. Okay, there we go. So go ahead and you're done with your Ed puzzle. go back to Canvas and think about doing the should do and the aspire to do. Hit me up if you have questions. I'll see you tomorrow.